The plane hit severe turbulence. The guy never thought he'd be in a plane crash before he got to the firing range. The man at that moment prayed to God to save and preserve him. Of course, everyone on the airplane was also very much disturbed. Gao Yang realized that he definitely wouldn't die here. He hasn't done much with his life yet. At this moment, Gao Yang started shouting and turning to his mom and dad. The plane then began to plummet to the ground. Of course, everyone was very badly frightened. Gao Yang realized that the plane was falling too fast, and at this speed, he would definitely die. The plane then plummeted into the water. Gao Yang, of course, was struck as he fell. He doesn't have to think about death. After all, he's only 23 years old and still has his whole life ahead of him. He didn't want to die. Gao Yang realized that he wasn't going to die here, and needed to find a way to get out faster. His time had not yet come, but his belt would not come undone in that instant. It looked like a guide and the knife was what he needed. With the help of the knife, Gao Yang was able to get out. They were already half dead, but let him not think about that. It was more important to save his own life now. He never would have thought that an airplane flying over land would end up in the sea, and no one's even wearing a life jacket. It was very close, but Gao Yang was able to get out. Fortunately, the life jacket was intact, although it had a limited lifespan. The weather was awful and it was necessary to swim to shore as soon as possible. The blood clones tried with all their might to stay on the water. Gao Yang tried with all his might to cope with swimming at this moment. He ended up simply falling off the waterfall. The African pasture stretched out before him. Gao Yang returned after a while. Then he got to his feet and began to climb out onto dry land. He walked confidently toward his goal. Gao Yang didn't realize where the hell he was. Luckily, he had an alarm case. It was personalized life-saving equipment. Looks like he'll have to spend the night here tonight. Gao Yang noticed that the knife was quite sharp and decided to use it for self-defense. In that instant, something surprised him greatly. He heard gunshots and didn't realize if there was a firefight going on. Gao Yang quietly began to make his way to the place where he heard the explosions. He then began to scrutinize everything around him. On the field in front of him there were indeed people shooting. Gao Yang appeared right in front of them. One of them was killed at that moment. A bullet through his head. Gao Yang was startled and surprised. He immediately began to turn around. The man asked Igor to check to see if anyone was still alive, and for the rest to clean up after the fight and get out of here. At this instant, there was a man beside Gao Yang. The guy realized he couldn't hide anymore, and there was only one thing left for him to do. Gao Yang put his hands up, stood up and told them not to shoot. He introduced himself as a Chinese survivor of a plane crash and added that he was not a threat. He apologized and said he had been injured in a plane crash and his wounds hurt, so he would move slowly. He asked them not to shoot. Igor was asked who he was. The man said he was a civilian and that the Chinese were not a threat. Gao Yang told the man that he was in a plane crash and was the only survivor. He added that if they rescued him, he would give them a lot of money, so it was more profitable for them to help him. After that, the man immediately ordered him to be killed. Gao Yang recalled that he was willing to pay for his salvation. The situation between them was becoming increasingly tense. The man called him a fool and again ordered him to kill him. Gao Yang realized that he had no choice and decided that his only chance of survival was to kill them. After that, Gao Yang swooped down on one of the guys. He then swung a knife at him. He then abruptly took the weapon away from him. He then immediately started shooting, asking for help. Of course, there were those who started shooting back. Gao Yang tried with all his might to dodge this shooting. He then began to roll over to avoid the shots. Gao Yang then hid behind a rock. He then checked the magazine to see if he had any ammunition left. Gao Yang then looked at how many enemies were still left. Everyone began to gradually approach him. He only had 2 rounds left, and needed to shoot for sure, and figure out a way to get out of here. Immediately after this thought, Gao Yang walked out from behind the stone. He pointed the gun at the first man in front of him. With an accurate shot to the head, he killed him. Gao Yang thought that when the sun went down, in the darkness his chances of survival would increase significantly. It was already nightfall. Heck, he was almost discovered because of his life jacket. Gao Yang continued to make his way further and dropped his life jacket. Then he finally broke away from his pursuers and crouched under a tree. Gao Yang woke up and quickly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw a pack of hyenas in front of him. One of them immediately started growling at him. Gao Yang grabbed his weapon and fired. Of course, with that shot, he wounded the hyena. Of course, the hyenas got scared and started backing away, and he in turn started yelling that he would shoot them all. After that, of course, the hyenas started running away. Gao Yang kissed the weapon and said that it was good that they had escaped. Then he looked at his weapon. 3 days ago, he decided to fly to an African pasture to shoot real guns. To achieve this goal, he traveled to Ethiopia. The original plan was to hunt in the local hunting grounds, but he had no idea that his life would be in constant danger. From the moment he got on the plane, he was constantly threatened. Gao Yang started crying and wiping his tears. In that instant, one could see the snake starting to approach Gao Yang. A few seconds later, she bit the guy. He instantly grabbed her. Then he flung it away from him. Gao Yang immediately began to examine his wound. After that, he grabbed a knife and ran after the snake. He then cut it in half with a knife. Immediately afterward, he just fell to the ground. In that instant, it could be heard that someone was running towards him. Gao Yang assumed that his pursuers, probably soldiers, had found him. It looks like he's going to die today. Gao Yang immediately remembered his mom and dad. He apologized to them and admitted that he should have listened to them and not flown here. Gao Yang then lost consciousness. As it turned out, they were people from some tribe. They surrounded Gao Yang and began to examine him. One of the men touched him and turned to the others. The man looked very agitated. Then they took it to their settlement. A lot of people gathered around him. The woman asked if this was really the guy who was brought in from the outside. The son asked his mom why this guy's skin was so light-colored. The woman tried to explain to him, but the man told everyone to shut up and get out. To help the guy, the man concocted some kind of mixture. After a while he said he had done all he could and now his life depended solely on him. It was the Akuli tribe. One of the guys complained about being forced to stay up in the middle of the night. He was also perplexed as to why his father wanted him to take care of the injured man. The guy really wanted to sleep. Gao Yang opened his eyes and saw him in front of him. He instantly grabbed his arm at that instant. Gao Yang asked who he was. The guy answered him, but Gao Yang didn't understand what exactly he said at all. Gao Yang repeated the question, saying that he didn't understand anything. After that, Gao Yang fainted again. The guy laid him down on the bed and started waving his hand in front of his face to see if he was conscious. Gao Yang then came to his senses again. The boy informed his father that Gao Yang had woken up. The man said in his own language that now that he was awake, he had nothing to fear as they were not evil. Although Gao Yang didn't understand their words, he caught the good intentions. Slowly he began to realize what had happened. He only survived thanks to the help of the Akuli tribe. 3 years later, Gao Yang rushed after the antelope at this instant. This time he was not alone, but with other members of the tribe. Gao Yang drew his bow and prepared to shoot his prey. It had been 3 years since he had been in the Akuli tribe. The Akuli tribe was extremely primitive. There were only 17 people in the whole tribe and they lived a quiet and peaceful life, hunting and gathering fruit for food. One of the guys complained that he was really tired and this sheep was still running around. There were only 5 people in the tribe who could hunt, and if food could not be obtained today, the entire tribe could suffer from starvation. Gao Yang told Xiao Ba that they needed to hurry up or the other animals might come running to their prey. They managed to track down the goat. They began to slowly approach her. At that moment, a leopard appeared in front of them. Of course, everyone, without exception, was extremely surprised. The leopard had already put his paw on the prey. Gao Yang began to get nervous, for the chieftain and the leopard had come face to face in a fight for prey. The man reached forward and began to step closer. He told everyone to back away slowly and listen to his instructions. Immediately after these words, the leopard attacked the man. The man did not expect the attack and did not have time to react. Gao Yang began to worry about him. He told Da Ba and Xiao Ba to approach from behind, and he and Cousteau would attack from the front. The chief was against it and told them to act faster. At that instant, they attacked the leopard. The leopard then attacked another man. The man fell to the ground and tried to fight off the animal. At this moment, Gao Yang took aim at the leopard. After that, he fired a shot and hit the beast. He told Xiao Ba to use his spear to gouge out the leopard's eye. The guy immediately set about it. Eventually he was able to pierce the beast's eye. The leopard began to feel unbearable pain. Gao Yang noticed that fortunately, the leopard appeared to be old and sick. They immediately ran to the chief. Gao Yang began to bandage the man's wound. Everyone was looking at him in that moment. The chief told Da Ba that if he died, he should lead the tribe, and if he also died, Xiao Ba would become the chief. No one wanted to hear about who was going to be the leader, and everyone started crying. The man told them to stop crying, reminding them that he was old and everyone has their hour. The boy assured me that his father would not die and would definitely survive. He looked at him hopefully at this moment. At this moment, Gao Yang noticed that the man stood up. He asked his father to let Xiao Ba become the new chief. Gao Yang objected, saying that there must be a way to save the chieftain. The man withdrew Gao Yang's hand at this instant. He called Xiao Ba over to give him the chief's sigil, saying that he would make an excellent leader in the future. Gao Yang's hands were trembling at this moment. He decided that he would avenge the leopard on the chief. Gao Yang quickly ran back. He followed the leopard's tracks. The chief noticed his actions. He told Cousteau to catch up with Gao Yang and stop him. The guy shouted to Gao Yang to stop. At this instant, Gao Yang abruptly stopped. He saw tire tracks on the ground. The guy said they should obey their father and Da Ba. Gao Yang suggested following the tire tracks to find other white men who could help the chief with medicine. Then they began to follow the trail. Soon they noticed that people in cars had stopped in the middle of the field. Gao Yang told Cousteau to listen to him. If he heard gunshots or shouting, he should run away immediately and warn the others. Gao Yang also added that if he heard his name, he would approach him regardless of the circumstances. Cousteau promised to come to the rescue if Gao Yang got into trouble, and to rush over only as a last resort. Gao Yang agreed with this. After that, he pulled out an arrow. If people don't turn out to be military, maybe they'll help. At that instant, a crowd of people stood in front of the tent. There were many armed men among them. 3 people could be seen in the center, one of whom was holding a camera. The man was adjusting his camera at that moment. Gao Yang saw this man and immediately realized that it was a great sign. It was neither poachers nor the army. Then there was a chance to save the chief and Da Ba. Gao Yang walked up to them, greeted them, and asked for help. After that, he ran to his men. Everyone started to help him regain his strength. He was then surrounded, pointing his gun. The man told him to lower his weapon and listen to him first. When that didn't happen, the man got angry and ordered the weapon to be lowered again. Gao Yang greeted the man and repeatedly asked for help. After that, he began to explain the situation. The man told Evan to listen to him and get a first aid kit and everything he needed for a blood transfusion. He then told Daniel to get the car ready. At that moment, the woman told the professor that he should take at least 2 armed guards with him. She explained that having security guards is necessary because this is Africa where it is dangerous and you have to be prepared for anything. Everything was ready and they could move out. The professor told the guy to get in the car and show the way. After that, they went to the others. Cousteau noticed that a lot of time had passed and Gao Yang still hadn't returned and began to worry about him. He was thinking of the chief and Da Ba at this moment. At this moment, Gao Yang started waving at him, showing him that he was here and beckoning him to get into the car. The guy was very happy to see him and even cried. The professor introduced himself as Dennis Rhodes. He also introduced the beautiful girl beside him. Her name was Lynn Taylor. The professor asked to tell about himself, noting that he wondered how Gao Yang knew English, since he didn't seem to be a true aborigine like the others. At this point, everyone was greatly surprised. The girl told the professor that he was being too hasty with his questions, given that their chief was hurt. The man laughed, agreed with her, and apologized for his excessive curiosity. Gao Yang assured him that there was nothing to apologize for and said that he would tell him everything. He introduced himself, explaining that he was a Chinese survivor of a plane crash after which the Akuli tribe had rescued him, and he had spent about 3 years with them. Everyone was amazed to hear this. The guy with the camera remarked that Gao Yang was incredibly lucky and asked to talk about his experience, saying it must be a fascinating story. The girl rebuked him for showing curiosity despite the possible death of the chief. He apologized and assured that he was worried about the chief's life. He also apologized to the guy, saying his father would be okay. Cousteau was still scared, though no one understood the reason for it. They drove as fast as they could. The guy waved in front of the man, showing that he was still alive. It was at this moment that Gao Yang and the others arrived. Everyone was happy to have them back. Gao Yang reassured them, telling them that they would be able to save the chief since he had brought the white wizards. People began to approach the man. One of them leaned over and checked his pulse. He reported that the man was still alive and could be saved. He then forcibly opened his eyes and brightened them. Everyone was very surprised and hoping for a miracle. The doctor noted that the man was lucky. The leopard's teeth tore only 2 small blood vessels without hitting the main ones. He added that this increases the chances of rescue. Upon hearing this, everyone began to rejoice. However, the doctor warned that the man's condition remained grave due to severe blood loss and demanded to know if there was anyone with blood type 0 among them. The guy, not understanding what the doctor said, asked what was going on. He stated that he would translate from English so everyone could understand. Gao Yang tells Xiao Ba that his father needs a blood transfusion. In order for it to be successful, the doctor must do a blood test. They followed him to check his blood type as soon as possible. Only then can they move on to the next step and save the chief. The guy was determined. Then they headed for the car. The girl offered to transfuse her blood first, as she was type 0. Gao Yang was taken aback by her suggestion. The doctor explained that direct blood transfusion from one person to another is quite dangerous. It is difficult to control the amount of blood given, and deaths have often occurred because of this. She replied that she understood the risks, but taking blood for testing takes a lot of time they don't have. It is better to transfuse her blood first, otherwise the man could die before he gets help. The man agreed and asked the girl to get ready. The girl sat up and held out her hand. Gao Yang thanked Miss Lin on behalf of the whole tribe. He promised that, according to Chinese tradition, he would return kindness for kindness. Xiao Ba was as stunned as the others. The girl asked if there is not an old saying in China that it is better to save a man's life than to build 7 floors for a monastery. This, she said, means that saving a human life is the greatest feat. Gao Yang bowed and thanked her. He added that if she felt dizzy, let her tell him at once. The man reported that the blood types of Xiao Ba, Da Ba and Cousteau matched those of the chief, so transfusions could be performed. At this point, the girl felt sick. The man rejoiced, saying that all that remained was to complete the transfusion and the chief would be saved. He specified that Da Ba will not have a blood transfusion because he is wounded and taking antibiotics, so it is better for him to rest. About half an hour into the blood transfusion, the man removed his gloves and reported that unless there were any complications, the man's life was no longer in danger. However, he noted that the chief is still very weak and needs to be taken to safety. There was dead silence. Gao Yang began to cry. He hugged the man and thanked him. The man responded modestly, saying he was just a security guard and hadn't done anything special. Gao Yang looked at Daniel at this moment. After that, he hugged him as well. He also thanked Lin, adding that he didn't even know how to thank her. Danielle was surprised to see the guy hugging the girl. The girl said he hugged her too tightly. Gao Yang immediately apologized, explaining that he was too excited. The professor joked, calling it a little holiday, and asked how it would be said in Chinese. At this point, the cameraman noticed that Gao Yang had eaten someone else's tofu. Gao Yang laughed, but the operator was not satisfied. At this point, the professor was informed by radio that the camp was under attack. He was advised to leave immediately and not to return, as the attackers had killed everyone. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked and frightened. The man instantly picked up the walkie-talkie. He is informed that Charlie has been killed and they're being chased. There are many of them, and it is dangerous to go back, as it was a pre-planned attack. At that instant, the professor noticed something. It was at this point that the man was killed. His last words were a plea for the professor to flee. The professor was badly frightened. He begged Albert to answer the radio. Gao Yang grabbed the professor's hand. He said Albert was already dead. He had distracted the attackers to give them a chance to escape, and now the most important thing was to get out of here quickly. The professor objected, arguing that he was responsible for his men in the camp, so he should return. The man ran to the car. Gao Yang stopped and asked if the professor wanted to come back to die. He reminded him that everyone had already died, and that it was more important to take care of the living than the dead. After that, the professor simply fell to his knees. Everyone in the camp was dead, and the professor had heard it himself. Gao Yang insisted that he listen to him and get out of here, as he couldn't let him die here. The professor agreed, recognizing that Gao Yang was right. The living were indeed more important than the dead. He said that he should leave immediately. He asked Gao Yang to tell his men to depart with them. Gao Yang started calling out to the others, telling them to follow them and get into the second car. It was in that instant that he noticed the blood in front of him. It was snipers, and he yelled for everyone to get on the ground immediately. Gao Yang could only watch as the man fell in front of him. The snipers then killed a second man. The professor saw it with his own eyes. Gao Yang shouted, jumped on top of the professor and ordered everyone to lie down. All at once lay down on the floor except the 3 young men, who did not realize what was happening and remained standing. At this moment, Gao Yang noticed one of the snipers. The sniper was just taking aim at one of the guys. Gao Yang shouted in the Akuli language that they were being attacked and ordered everyone to lie down on the ground. At this moment, the bullet flew past, and Gao Yang managed to grab the guy, causing him to fall down. The bullet struck right through the tree. The girl didn't realize who was following them or why. Gao Yang only noticed the location of one sniper. From the sounds of gunfire, he could guess where the others were, but their exact number remained unknown. He ordered everyone to seek cover behind the car. People immediately started crawling toward shelter. Gao Yang raised his weapon at this moment. He realized it was an old-fashioned double-barreled caliber. Fortunately, he had practiced shooting in China with a similar rifle. The differences between the two were minimal. However, this rifle was not suitable for long distances, so Gao Yang decided to use the Alaska 47 that one of the guards had. The professor begged Gao Yang to crawl towards them and leave immediately. To get the machine gun, Gao Yang would have to stick his head out. He had no choice, as weapons were necessary to fight back. He gathered his wits at that moment. Then he reached forward, grabbed his weapon. The sniper took aim at him at that moment and fired, but the bullet luckily flew past. Gao Yang realized how close it was and was glad that the sniper had missed. He determined that the enemy was less than 300 meters away. Gao Yang told the professor that there were at least 20 people surrounding them and they should leave the place immediately. The professor started to open the car door at this point. Gao Yang insisted that the professor leave with his men to the tribe, and he himself would hold off the enemies. The professor suggested leaving together, saying they had a chance. Gao Yang rejected the idea, adding that because of one, everyone could get hurt, and urged to forget about him and quickly leave. He asked the chief to show him the way to the tribe, as in their current state they could not help him. If he got out, he would find them himself. He also added that if the enemies found the tribe, let them leave it at once. Afterward, he waved his hand at them. The professor recognized that this was the only way out and asked everyone to follow the leader. He tossed Gao Yang the walkie-talkie and told him to catch it. Gao Yang caught the walkie-talkie at this instant. The professor clarified that Taylor had another walkie-talkie that they could use for communication. The girl noted that Gao Yang was really brave, and expressed her confidence that he could survive. Gao Yang smiled, looked at her and nodded. The chief in his own language ordered everyone to follow him. Even if there are more enemies than last time, 50 rounds should be enough to repel their attack. Gao Yang started shooting at the enemies. After that, the enemies stopped approaching him. Gao Yang continued firing at the opponents. He realized that he had to constantly change his position or they would be able to detect him at night. At this point, one of the men gave the order to abort the mission to capture him alive and authorized a shoot to kill. It was now clear why their actions had been so slow. They had underestimated his threat and wanted to catch him alive. After that, the enemies started shooting at Gao Yang at the same time. Enough time had already passed, and Gao Yang was sure that the professor and the chief had reached a safe distance. He had accomplished his task and decided to save his own life. Gao Yang shot back at his opponents. Opponents ducked at this point to avoid his shots. Gao Yang realized that this was his chance to escape. He got to his feet and started running across the field. One of the bullets grazed his ear and he was nearly killed. He needed to increase the distance between himself and his enemies to reduce the chance of being shot. He decided to take the risk. Gao Yang thanked Allah, God and Buddha for staying alive. He ran as hard as he could from his enemies. When he reached the tree, he hid behind it and breathed heavily, glad he was still alive. Gao Yang cautiously peeked out to locate the opponents. He started shooting at them from behind cover. It turned out to be the right decision. Gao Yang managed to kill several enemies. After that, he ran again, increasing the distance between himself and the enemies. He broke away from his pursuers by 500 meters, which was good for the forest but dangerous in an open field. At that moment, someone on the walkie-talkie asked if he could hear them. He hoped the radio wasn't off. At this time, the man radioed Mr. Morgan that Gao Yang's luck was about to run out and promised to find and kill him. After that, the man fell silent. Gao Yang had never heard this man's voice before, but he realized from his words that he was the one leading the attack. The walkie-talkie started asking Gao Yang if he was all right and asked him to reply if he had the chance. Gao Yang informed the professor that he was fine. At this point, the man asked who the professor was and why he was using this frequency, demanding an explanation. Communication between the radios was through a single terminal, so the enemies could hear them. The man stated that they were not just making a documentary about animals and called them terrorists unworthy of life. He added that if they want to stay alive, they should make their targets and identities known. This is not a request, but a threat. If they refuse, they will be killed. The man at this point wiped his face with his hand. He then shouted, introducing himself as Danny Rhodes, a naturalist working at the U.S. Biological Institute, and explained that he was helping the National Geographic Channel make a documentary. The situation became awkward. The documents from the camp confirmed that he was telling the truth. However, because of the target's mistake, they had killed many of their men. The man asked for the shooting to stop. Gao Yang realized that they had indeed misjudged the target, but he could not accept their apology, for they had killed 14 of his comrades. The man suggested that Gao Yang blamed him for everything, but recalled that one of the natives had killed 8 of their soldiers, including a sniper. The man asked if the Aboriginal man could hear him and offered to join them, noting his abilities. However, he said that the firefight could continue, although his men would no longer pursue Gao Yang as they needed to find the real target. At this moment, Gao Yang noticed the enemies starting to retreat. He realized they were safe now, but he was still going to be careful. Gao Yang reported that he too was safe and asked the professor to radio the chief to talk to him. He explained that he was at the pond where wild boars had last been seen and asked the chief to wait for him there. He warned about the possible danger and said not to make fires. After that, Gao Yang continued across the field. It was hard to believe that he had endured 40-degree heat, running and shooting for hours. He certainly wasn't capable of that before. He needed to hurry before the sun went down, as navigating in the dark would become more difficult. Night has already fallen. Gao Yang realized that he was lost. He radioed Taylor that he was waiting for the clouds to clear or the sun to come up. Taylor advised him to be careful. After that, Gao Yang sat down to rest. Then one could observe someone shining a bright light on him. Gao Yang noticed several cars that were approaching him. Then they opened fire. As it turned out, they shot right at the car in front of them. However, they missed and the explosion occurred right in front of the car. Damn it, he just wanted to sit here and leave in peace. Why'd he get in trouble again? Just now it was an explosion from a missile. He doesn't want to find himself back in a battle he had nothing to do with, and now they're using machine guns and RPGs. He needs to get out of here as soon as possible. At that instant, the car began to turn. His chance of escape was ruined by an out-of-control car. Or what? Gao Yang at this moment, he realized he had to stay calm. The driver was already dead. The others should be getting out now. Gao Yang carefully observed the situation, and indeed, people from the car began to climb out. Just at that moment, a man began aiming an RPG at them. One of the cars flipped over at that moment. Then the man started aiming again. After that, he fired again. The missile went straight into the car. The main thing was that he didn't have an Alaska 47, but some other assault rifle. The rifle was useless against 2 cars rushing forward. But at this instant, Gao Yang was greatly surprised. Then a few more cars arrived. One of them suddenly rose into the air and flipped over. He took out the most threatening vehicles with 2 rocket shots and then killed the drivers of 2 more vehicles with just a few short bursts from his automatic rifle. This man was unbelievable. You don't want to mess with this guy. If he sees any movement, he'll shoot you before you can explain anything. Then they started shooting at the man. He said getting in the car so they could drive on. The man and the guy started to approach him. Gao Yang realized that, thank goodness, they were leaving. He could be safe now. However, at that instant someone fired, and the bullets riddled the man. He said the others are climbing out and they have night vision devices. They all started getting out of the car. After that, the man began to fall. The man asked Moses how he was doing. Moses replied that the bullet had grazed him and he could not move. Gao Yang didn't know who these people were, but he really hoped that they wouldn't bring him trouble. In that instant, the bullet passed right beside him. Gao Yang thought about the fact that a bullet flew next to his cheek. Someone was shooting at him. After that, Gao Yang immediately began to move forward. Then he advanced practically to the men who were shooting. The man asked who the guy was. Gao Yang replied that he was a friend and asked not to shoot at him. After that, he began to approach them. He said he wasn't their enemy. It just happened to be where he ended up. Don't let them ask him that now. The important thing is not to let those people kill them. Gao Yang started shooting at the enemies. He said the opponents have night vision devices. It's a one-sided fight. If only he had one too, he could destroy them all. The guy offered him a rifle with a night vision scope and asked if he should take it or not. Gao Yang asked the guy if he was an idiot and told him to carry her quickly or else he would die here. After a few seconds, the guy handed him the rifle. Gao Yang asked what kind of model it was. The guy replied that it was an M1A, specially tuned. It has very high accuracy. He asked if Gao Yang knew how to use this rifle. This rifle is a civilian version of the US military M14, not identical except that the M1A can only fire in automatic mode. He happens to be an M14 shooter, so he'll be able to handle it. Gao Yang took aim at the enemy at this moment. After that, he shot him and killed him. Gao Yang then began to climb under the car. He spotted the enemies in front of him and started shooting them in the legs. The man who had been hit started shouting for everyone to go to cover. The enemy seized them, and immediately after these words he was killed. Then everyone started shelling the car. The distance to the enemy is too close. The magnification in the scope greatly limits the field of view. Gao Yang got out of the car at this moment. He then fired the shotgun at them. After that, the man was blown to pieces. Gao Yang, right on the fly, started shooting. He realized he couldn't use that rifle. The dacha was too big. They don't seem to be daring to shorten the distance anymore. Hell, although he's still strong mentally, but his case has already reached its limit. Gao Yang asked them if they were all right, if they had food and water. The boy asked his father if he was okay. The man said he was fine and asked Bob what was wrong with him, if he was hurt. Bob replied that he had been hit a little, but that it was not serious. The guy abruptly remembered that he had chocolate, water and some more food in his bag. Gao Yang said that if the enemy retreats, he will help him take water. He can no longer stand on his feet. After that, they started bringing him water. He immediately started drinking it. He was then given chocolates and with a happy face he looked at them. After that, he bit it off. Gao Yang was overjoyed and said that he finally felt alive. Bob says he has to take out the sniper and then they can get out of here. What's he thinking? Of course he wants to kill the sniper, but to do so he will have to come out of hiding. The enemy will not give him a chance to shoot, because he will become a live target for them. The guy asked if there was no way. Gao Yang didn't reply, just bit into the chocolate at this moment. Then he took the chocolate out of his mouth and said that right now there are no ways. We just have to wait. He asked if they had any more RPGs, bazookas or anything else in their car, but was told that there were only 2 RPGs, which they had recently used up. It was bad enough that the sword-wielding enemy didn't dare act. They had time to talk about who they were and why they were attacked. They came here to hunt. Who is he and why did they attack him? Gao Yang said that they are not taught to pry into other people's privacy, but do they really take RPGs for normal hunting? After that, he called him Mr. Morgan. The man became furious and started asking who he was, how he knew his name. Gao Yang said, so he means he is right, and the man is really Morgan. The man pointed a gun at him and told him to answer his question immediately, or else let him not blame him for shooting. Gao Yang said he knew him because someone mistook them for his men, started killing them. He killed 14 people and then realized his mistake and went looking for him. Now he understands. Or does he? The man said it was unfortunate and regretted it. Gao Yang said that he can't blame him for this. After all, it is just a coincidence. But he wants to ask a question. Who attacked them? Where are they? The man said they were in the Republic of Sudan and he did not know the identity of their attacker. But when he found out, he would make him pay for everything. Gao Yang was surprised that they were in Sudan. Although he did not know the exact location of the plane crash, he knew for sure that the plane should not have been flying toward the Republic of Sudan. Bob started asking what was wrong with him, what he was thinking about, and his father asked who he was. Gao Yang said he was on a plane going to Ethiopia, then got into a plane crash. How the hell did he end up in Sudan? Sudan is now in a civil war between South and North Sudan, and although the large-scale war has stopped, the small-scale skirmishes and attacks continue unabated. Now it's clear why he's caught in constant firefights. Wherever he ends up, he should thank God he survived the plane crash. Gao Yang realized that the man was right. It didn't matter where he was. The important thing was that he was alive. He should focus on the enemy sniper. If he took him out, he could get back to the leader. Gao Yang asked if they had tracer bullets. Yes, but he only took 5 to try to hit the sniper. He said, the car on the opposite side just exploded. He saw the sniper through the scope. His hand is behind the car. This car belongs to a Toyota IC80. The fuel tank is on the left side of the body side. Let it hit the rear wheel and the rear side will drop down, making the fuel tank accessible. Gao Yang then suggested to see if the sniper could hide in the back of the car. But there was no such thing. Is he an asshole? Is he trying to hit me? It's as simple as that. Amazing. Fast barking. At the same time tank. Sniper position of the enemy. The ability to be the table of the right flank. He lurks. Bring out the personality with positive intent. Gao Yang said screw. Let him put the electric light. It will play for him. Heck, no reaction at all. Black light and dark fire. He doesn't know if he's hit. Fuel tank leak. Can only rely on the darkness. He tried at least. Gao Yang realized that one could only rely on the darkness to try. After that, the guy sighed heavily and took good aim. After that, Gao Yang fired a shot. It worked. The deed was done. Burning won't help hasten death. It doesn't work. Is a low-light night vision device or an infrared night vision device? Are they all now using alarmed methods that were used in the past? Gao Yang began to approach them at this moment. He finally forced it out. The man was very much surprised when he saw Gao Yang aiming at him. After that, Gao Yang hit him right in the chest. Gao Yang said that he was just using his eyesight. Let them take a look at this sight. He is already here. No more panic. They can come out. Bob told Gao Yang that he was really amazing. He shouldn't talk. He'd had enough. He was all fascinated by him. By the way, he hasn't asked him his name yet. Gao Yang said his name was Gao Yang and he was from China. It was a great honor for Bob. Could he recognize him? Even though he already knew him, he still wanted to introduce himself. His name is Morgan Lee. He thanked him for the help he had given. Gao Yang and the man shook hands at this moment. At this point, the mysterious language of men could be heard. I was very much surprised. Gao Yang heard the man's voice. He said, "Kill the men. It's only him. Let him recognize the wrong target." The man thanked Gao Yang for his help, but said that there was no need to go now. Let him get up and leave. He will give it to him. If he is hungry, let him say so. They will set a reward. Gao Yang said that he has people who support him, but they can be with him. He will get up and leave. He thanks them for their help, but they need to leave urgently. Can he help them for a reward? He'll take it. Have him take them to Malakalu. Pay him $100,000. How's that for something like that? Hero said that's not the point. He already has people supporting him. Besides, he's not hiring. Why not? He said it was because he didn't want to die. They're not familiar with this place. And besides, he doesn't know where the danger is yet. Why not ask him to drive them? He thinks they want to leave too, but will still pay him $100,000. Please have him escort them. If it's because he brought them in, causing unnecessary harassment, let him deliver them in peace. This really can't stand it. The full hero apologized and said he needed to ask his friends for their opinions first, and then he would decide if he should help them. Gao Yang asked to be answered when they arrived. Bob noticed that his father said he would help them. Would that be true? He realized and wondered if he had any doubts. At this moment, Gao Yang replied to the professor that they were discussing the end, and were still thinking whether he could help them, provided their own wish was granted. Gao Yang said that they could follow him temporarily, but in the end, they needed to leave soon. Bob of course was glad that they would be protected. Then they got into the car. Gao Yang told the man that he would show the way. After a while, they arrived. The professor hugged Gao Yang and thanked him for his courage. He had saved them. She said the brave don't die so easily. They would see him again. And she was so happy. Gao Yang said that no matter whether there is fame or not, he intends to be the guardian of the beautiful audience of the Knights of the Lord. But Catherine is his little sister. Isn't it time to embrace one of them? The girl was very much surprised, but after a few seconds confusedly kissed him on the cheek. Of course, the main character was embarrassed at this point. The girl asked, "What is this?" A knight who changed to show his gratitude. She said those two are the ones mentioned on the walkie-talkie. It was Morgan Reeves, and next to him was his son, a Mr. Morgan named Bao Reeves. They may know everything, but they too have been hurt by these terrorists. They have a purpose. He was very grateful and sorry for their misfortune. People are expressing pain and gratitude. It is not his fault. He does not belong to these terrorists. Mr. is wrong. He doesn't have to pay for what happened.